Today I want to take a little bit of a different approach to what I'm talking about. I'm not going to give you specific exercises and tell you to go do this or go do that. I want to talk a little bit about drumming as a whole. Now, when I work with a student, I hear, well, so-and-so told me I have to play with my wrist. Or so-and-so told me that I can never take my fingers off the stick. And there are a lot of these sort of cliche sayings that we were told when we were starting out as students, that our teachers continue to tell us now. And I gotta say, it is too narrow sometimes. I think we need to take a more broad approach to the way we think about playing. Because even if you're a beginner, you can start to comprehend sort of the big picture if we train things the right way. But that doesn't mean that there aren't moments where we need to focus in, because we do. And I do give my students things where we're focusing on just getting a wrist motion better, focusing on finger control better. Getting the arms involved is huge. So many students come to me and their biggest issue ends up being they aren't using their arms the right way. Because somewhere along the way, they watched a video on YouTube or they had a teacher who told them to only play with their wrists. So they got really good at that. But now they have a poor tone on the snare drum when they are trying to get accents going, because they're creating an accent with a wrist whip, so it's really thin tone, right? It also lacks control if you're doing that. So even if you're a beginner, I want you to get your arms involved. Arms, you need to use those for accents, and you have to use those for rolls. And if you can do those two things, you can start to play a little more relaxed and with a little more power. So let's just talk about that for a second. If you're going to play with your wrists, you're just going to practice big open strokes like this. But this full stroke is as high as you're going to get. And if you're playing naturally and relaxed, this is the full potential you get for volume. Anything over that, you're creating a bigger velocity and you're throwing it in with muscle and you're gripping to hit the drum harder. And that's when bad tone starts to happen. That's when injuries in your hands start to happen, because you're building tension. So if you want to create an accent, you got to pick the arm up, because now you're dropping your stick from a higher height and you're going to have more volume potential, even though you're not going to use any more muscle. You're not going to use any more strength in your playing. It's just gravity. Here's a big difference. This pad right here will actually help us hear that difference better. So, full wrist stroke, relaxed, gravity's dropping the stick with a little bit of help from me. Bring it up here. Hear the difference? There's way more volume potential, and on a drum, it's even more obvious. All right, so think of it this way. If you dropped a brick, let's picture a 5-pound weight from the stick, or not from the stick, from this stick height. You dropped a 5-pound weight on your drum. That'd be kind of scary. Your drum would probably survive, but you get a certain amount of velocity into the drum head. If you come up here and you dropped a 5-pound weight from here, that could be devastating to your drum. You could blow through the drum head, and it's the same amount, it's the same 5 pounds, right? And that's about the weight of our arm. It's about 5 pounds. So you're just utilizing nature to get a bigger, fuller sound without having to create more tension in your playing. So you got to get your arms involved from the beginning. So, like I said, to reiterate, we do need to have moments where we focus in on using just our wrist strokes, and where we focus in on our arm motion slowly to get that smoothed out, right? But we too often get narrow-minded when we hear those things and just do that for everything. Snare drum rolls need to be arms as well. So I don't even know I can't even roll effectively using just my wrists. It's kind of uneven, it kind of feels forced. It feels like I'm kind of maxed out on speed. I don't feel like I have a good level of control. And some of that stuff is because when you pick up your wrist, it does affect what your fingers do, especially your back fingers. When you get a full extension, it pulls these tendons in a weird way. It creates a different kind of pressure on the stick. So if you're doing that while you're rolling, I feel like you lose the finesse of control in your back fingers. But if you use your arm to do most of the roll, you can set these fingers up and have way more control of the amount of pressure and tension that you put on them, which means your rolls can be more even. They can be faster if you wanted them to be. And it's just easier that way, to play that way, to be clean and efficient and effective in your sound. So, arms need to be something you train from the beginning, from day one. You need to be cautious though. Like I said, by thinking whole picture here, you're able to maybe stop the bad habits too, right? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of teachers or drummers that are giving you advice on YouTube who are talking about certain strokes and using wrist or using arm, they just don't tell you that part of it. You have to use all of them. And because we don't tell you that, then you zero in on whatever that lesson was and start doing it for everything. Okay? So know that there are different ways to hit the drum. You need to use wrists, you need to use arms, you have to be able to have finger control so you can control the stick with truly just your fingers at times. And I think it's okay to start incorporating that from day one. So we're going to do some wrists and we're going to pick up for the arm to get an accent. So here you're actually incorporating the wrists and the accents all with one exercise. And it's a simple exercise. You heard it. I'm sure you could repeat it yourself. You have an accent and then 4 wrist strokes or 3 wrist strokes. Yep. Good. This is the number one thing that students who come to me trying to break through to another level of their playing have to fix. The way that they combine using their arm strokes and wrist strokes. It's not smooth. They're using them at the wrong time sometimes or just not at all. So that's the most simple basic exercise you can do if you're a beginner to start making sure those things are working together, working as a system for yourself. Okay? The next thing is grip. I hear a lot of different things about grip, and I'll be honest with you, my grip changes depending on what I'm doing. It depends on how loud I'm playing. It depends on how fast I'm playing sometimes. It depends on the style of music that I'm playing sometimes. Usually I'm playing a traditional grip, but sometimes it will go matched grip. All right, so I'm going to talk mostly about what my right hand does because this is where the biggest changes happen in a grip. And most people are playing matched grip these days. So whatever's happening in the right hand will happen in the left hand too. So a lot of people will say that you need to get some space in here. You need to have your stick at the first pointer finger or the first knuckle of your pointer finger, and that's kind of where the pivot point is. And that's great. I play like that a lot. Especially if I'm doing like rudimental things. I'm playing with a bigger stick. I keep it about there. I use my back fingers a ton when I'm playing like big, loud, boisterous rudimental pieces. My back finger control is massive. If I'm playing really soft, I will actually get rid of this gap. I'll go to the second knuckle and I'll close this off a little bit. This does a few things. It shifts where the stick sits in my hand. It goes from here, where it's kind of closed off and close to these fingers, and it shifts it to here. So just that little shift from here to here changes how the stick responds in the hand. So all of a sudden it goes from being closed off here to having a little bit of an opening. There's a little bit of an opening in here for the stick to be in. So that just changes the way I can control things. It feels like there's a little more freedom to the stick in some ways, and it also changes sort of where the weight of the stick is within the fulcrum balance. Here, there's a certain amount of stick below the fulcrum, so that's a certain amount of weight that helps the stick rebound up, and I'm playing big with a lot of volume, so the stick is going to bounce up easier. But when I play soft and I close this off, it actually changes the weight. There's a little more weight in the back now. This fulcrum, it kind of slides up a little higher up the stick. So there's more weight on the back, which means I don't need quite as much velocity to get the stick to bounce back up for me. All right, so that is something that I think is really useful for any sort of drumming if you're doing. And I think it's totally a good thing to be able to transition that grip around a little bit. Okay, and it's nothing more than just a little roll. That's it. Okay. So then you have different ways of using your fulcrum for the best things you do. And I think too many times teachers will set you up and you have to stay there. I mean, I remember my traditional grip, perhaps the left hand's a little bit of a different situation, but I remember having tape wrapped around this knuckle so that it was pulled back and I could never move it, and I was holding a piece of ripped off paper between here so I could never separate these two, and it felt very rigid, right? And I know people do similar things with this, but I would encourage you, whether you're a beginner, a novice, or an advanced player, start playing around with these different fulcrums. So do some soft playing. It could be something as simple as paradiddles. But do them soft. Look where my grip went, right? And now I'm going to do them loud. Look where my grip went. It's more opened. It's more at the first knuckle. So loud. Check the grip. It's opened. It's here. Soft. It's closed off. And it's more here instead of there, right? So do all of these things. That's my biggest advice for drummers who are just starting. It's don't get just roped in and zeroed in on one thing. It's difficult to think that way because we know that to master something, you need to give it focus. So you're saying, I'm focusing on this one thing, but we're also creating habits right away. And you're creating restriction in your playing, and then in the future, you want to get better or break through to another level, and you have to like retrain a new muscle memory, which takes tons of time because now not only are you creating a new one, but you kind of also have to break an old one. But if you start at a slow enough tempo with the right attention to focus, you can incorporate all of these things from the beginning as just one system of playing. All right, and if you've already been playing for a few years, it's not too late to start doing it now. It's always better to start new things right away, right? So now if this is something you think you want to add in, start doing it today. Start slow, and it's going to get there. All right? Leave me some comments. Let me know if this is helpful. Let me know what you want to see next so that I can keep serving you in the best way possible. And keep drumming. See you next time.